Good day to everybody in TV land. This is Mike Hittner with Historic Point Basse Update. Today's special guest, Tom Brehmer, as usual.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tom. Recording this on the morning of the 2nd of December. You may see it certainly a different time than this. But I'd like to welcome you all aboard and kind of talk a little bit about what's coming up and a little bit about what's happened and what's going on. First, a little... Tom, let's go. If I know the last time we were here, we were just about ready to go on our trip to Midland, Michigan for MOMCC conference. And let's just wrap it up a little bit about what they did and some of the good things we got out of it and some of the things that Don recorded. Don Matthews goes with us, and Marianne Mishaw and Tom and I. And the good thing about Don is he likes to record stuff. So a lot of these sessions, and it's a shame that they aren't probably recorded for everybody because a lot of them could be shared with other people. And Don recorded probably 3 or 4 sessions, and we'll bring it back and we're actually going to use it in a training in January 6th for our citizen members, and so I think it's a good benefit. But just your little thoughts on MOMCC and what you kind of got out of it, Tom.
This was one of the better conferences we've gone to in a while. I went to the pre-conference was about a 4-hour stint at an Ojibwa tribal center.
Yeah, I think it actually, you guys, I was kind of surprised because we came in from an all-day session about a half an hour after you guys got back, and so you guys ran over because you were probably having good interchange.
We did, and things worked out real well. It for me is good background because Pierre was half Ojibwa. So the more I can learn about that culture, the more it can kind of run in the background as I do and learn more about my character, that I'm learning about his mother and grandfather's beliefs and how they operated, and that to me was really good. It's nothing I could use, tomorrow is great.
But it
enlightening,
but gives you background,
right?
And it fleshes your character out more, and that's important to get a more well-rounded.
And then we did have several, like you say. Don recorded the one Mike Fallon. I was trying to think of his name last night. I couldn't. Somewhere in the middle of the night, it came to me again. You know how that works. But Mike is a director of interpretation for several museums in Ohio. Excellent teacher. 31 years. 31 years.
Wow.
Excellent teacher, excellent character, first-person interpreter, and he did another class. This is the 3rd one that I've taken over the years with him, and Don recorded it, and that's what we're going to use for our training for our citizen members in January, to help to get them up to speed. And it isn't just you and I trying to relate, because we're still learning a lot like they are. I mean, we're experts, not experts at all. So Mike's video of that would be fine. Don also took one of the Emma Buck Farm, which is really, for us as museum people, if you want to call what we do a museum, outdoor museum, was something really intriguing. The gal was 98 years old, died about 10 years ago, had lived in the same house she was born in. It had never been updated since it was built just prior to the Civil War.
Yeah, my understanding is the family came by schooner or something to New Orleans and came up, and they were the second residents of this farmstead.
Right.
I think it was English or something that had been there before.
And they bought it. They were German.
And they bought it afterwards, and I was fascinated, as you were, that this woman had autism, supposedly, or some form of that.
They didn't know what it was at the time, but she certainly had it, yes.
But the way that the farm had never changed.
Yeah.
It was like a time capsule, and like you just walked in something that was 100, 125 years ago, and it was unchanged, which was, to me, it's one of the next sessions we're going to have at MOMCC's next conference will be in Collinsville, Illinois. It's east of St. Louis, about 20 minutes or so. And the interesting thing is, one of these tours, which I'm very tempted to go to, would be this Emma Buck farm, and just how it looks and how it hasn't changed. I don't know, I haven't really seen any of these other than something maybe from the 40s or 50s that hasn't changed, but this you're looking at the 1860s and 70s that hasn't changed for like 130 years.
And they're just beginning to unpack all this, as they call it, virgin material. When several of their family members came home from the Civil War, they packed their uniforms and their weapons in a trunk and put them in the attic. They're still there.
Yeah, and when somebody died, they packed all their material goods that they had in a trunk and put it in the attic, so everything was preserved.
It's just nuts. I mean, the museum professionals who make up a lot of the people that come to MOMCC, they're just...
Their jaws are dropping.
Oh, man. Yeah. And it's been that way now for 10 years since she's died, but they're getting a new administrator who seems to be really into the
and he kind of introduced it to us and kind of told us a little bit about it, and so that was the interesting thing of it. And the woman died on the site, was off the site maybe 3 or 4 times in her entire life.
Less than 24.
And a lot of those times were actually in the last year or so of her life, because she had a kind of a bucket list, and the woman that was kind of her caregiver at the time, anthropologist, I guess, from St. Louis, was instrumental in trying to help her fulfill some of this bucket list. So she took a ride on a motorcycle and a few of these things that you and I wouldn't think about necessarily, but to her, she had never done this.
I mean, it was to listen to this lady, and like she says that she was introduced to her through her sister, who had Emma's sister, who had passed away, and knew there would be some need for caretaking of her sister Emma, and she contacted this. She's an archaeologist, and had done work in their area preserving historic sites. So she contacted her and then passed away before the archaeologist came to, and she came and actually lived there for a time.
Yeah, I think
with
lived
Emma.
in a trailer because they didn't want her, or Emma was sensitive to other people living in the house or being in the house. So it took her like several years just to get to the kitchen area of the house.
But it was very interesting, and when you listen to the gal whose name I cannot remember talk about her, I mean, it's almost like taking care of grandma. I mean, at first there was some conflict, but as she got that she knew there was a need there, and that this great history of that part of America was still preserved, and Emma wanted that. Her deal is so that they can learn. I mean, this lady with special needs and other things was very intelligent and very in tune with that this was preserved and that people needed to know. And it was so cool.
Yeah, that's...
We'll know more. In a year, we'll have a good good report.
Because that's our conference on March 14th and 15th of 2015, which we'll be going to, and hopefully half a dozen, maybe more of our other members. And you know, the Cuyahoga Mounds are there, you know, the oldest raised mounds, I think, 4 mounds as far as they're flattened on top and stuff like that in the United States, or the Mississippi culture or whatever. So I mean, there's lots and lots of history there, and of course you're not even looking yet at St. Louis and all that St. Louis has to offer. With some of our pre-day is where we go and we take tours, or Tom went to the Ojibwa. I went to a couple museums that were in the Midland area of Michigan, and so the same thing happens on the next one in Collinsville, Illinois. So it's going to be a great conference. I'm excited about it. Usually you kind of go, well, should we go or shouldn't we go? And this year
we're going.
We're going. So it was that good. Just to bring you an update, our next event on the site is Saturday, December 20th, and that's Heritage Hollyday. And note the time change. It's from 3 to 7 p.m. I think originally it was 4 to 8 last year, and sometimes the websites or some of our previous literature might say 4 to 8, but it's 3 to 7. We found that some daylight hours with a little bit of evening hours are kind of fun because we have lanterns along the walkways, kind of like we do for Spirit Walk. And a lot of activities. The schoolhouse, there'll be activities for the kids. I think Jackie talked last night about making pine cones with peanut butter and rolling it in birdseed that kids can take home and hang out on a tree or whatever they'd like to do with those, or give them as a gift, that sort of thing.
Or hang them on a tree at our site and feed our birds.
Feed our birds out there, and there's a lot of birds. And in fact, for many years, we did a bird count there.
Yes.
I think probably for 20 years of our time down there. Then 3-bay shed, if the weather's permitting, we'll do, Don Matthews, our carpenter, will probably do some carpentry work in the 3-bay shed, and maybe Ted or somebody do a little log sawing or something like that with the kids. They're talking about some hot chocolate outside over open
marshmallows.
fire.
And marshmallows.
And marshmallows, yes. Over open fire, the blacksmith, Tracy Rice, will be there, and he'll be doing his thing in the blacksmith shop, keeping warm. And of course, we got a nice new, not new, but new old stove for him to provide a little auxiliary heat besides the forge itself. And then Tom, in the cabin, what are you planning to have?
We'll do a little cooking demonstration. In fact, I just did a little research on how I was doing it, and I have learned now a better way to do my hanging chicken thing. You truss them up a little differently. Watched YouTube last night about that, and from a gentleman that does a lot of historic cooking, is excellent at it. He's a professional at it, and he did a YouTube on how to truss a chicken and then to use the skewers to hang it, and kind of a rotisserie.
Yeah, because I think the last time you just had it hanging, it was kind of rotating with the heat or something.
Yeah, you do that, but and Tracy has made me some skewers that go through the wings and through the thighs. And but if you truss them together, they don't dry out as much on the outside because you have to get the heat to the inside. Yeah. So they tie them up tight, and I'll be watching that several more times before I truss up
them up tight. Is it with like cordage or
cordage? Yeah, some kind of a heavy cordage. I've got some there that good heavy, what you used to call grocery store string, that heavy cordage, and we'll do that. We'll probably do some hazelnuts. Many people, eat them raw. Filberts, hazelnuts, it's virtually the same nut. And we found that if you pan toast them over the open fire and they're still nice and warm, and you get that shell is nice and hard, and then you can crack it, that nut in there it's really good. And as a snack, we do that as our little thing, and then we'll talk about other stuff in the cabin.
Hot apple cider, maybe?
Oh yeah. Got to show off my new tea kettle I got.
Yes.
Copper tea kettle. But we'll do that. We'll talk about some of the other accoutrements and things that we bring with us into the cabin, and the fur trade in general. With us, there really is no decoration.
Right. That's what you'll learn, folks, on Heritage Hollyday. Each of the buildings is decorated or not decorated according to the era in which it was, and it was popular. And a lot of times we think of the Christmas tree, well, that didn't come over until probably the 1880s, 1890s, and so you don't really see that Christmas tree. The schoolhouse will have a Christmas tree because they're interpreting up to 1925, and so, but the house, the trader's cabin, if you have a swag in the house, you're probably
that would be pretty good, pretty modern for that time. The cabin would have been either a fur trader and his family, or several fur traders, depending on how it was and where and when it was. So the idea of 3 or 4 guys who are really struggling to survive through a Wisconsin winter, taking time to hang pine boughs in there, this ain't happening. But we did, there's many journal entries about inviting in either the natives from next door, the many times our in-laws is what they were, because we'd been married, intermarried, or the competing fur trade companies. I mean, it was cutthroat business.
It almost sounds, Tom, a little bit like the Civil War, where guys used to,
or the First World War, where they did that. Yes.
After the fighting had stopped, they'd kind of trade stuff back and forth between the foxholes, and almost.
It's almost like that in Christmas and New Year's. You read several journal entries about that. So we kind of do that. We're preparing our meal for our guests to come, and they aren't here yet. It was kind of the preparation. That's what we're doing when the public is there to visit us. And it's fun. I enjoy the Christmas one, other than my feet get cold.
Now, is it on a day, say a typical day we got today, it's supposed to be, the day we're filming this is 27 degrees, the high today is supposed to be. Now, how early, I know you got a stone fireplace there, and it takes a while to get that warmed up, or to get those stones warmed up. How long would you go out before? 3 to 7 we're looking at for public, but when would you go out? Maybe like 1 o'clock to get
or 12 o'clock.
Or 12 o'clock?
Get that fireplace and get that thing just roaring, and get the stone warmed up as much as you can. If we get 40 degrees in the cabin, so you can't see your breath.
That's pretty warm.
Near the fire, I mean, now I'm wearing a blanket coat. This is a coat made from a trade blanket. Probably 2 or 3 layers of shirts underneath it those days. Leggings, probably 2 pairs of leg coverings. Moccasins with wool socks and a thinner sock. And that's typical dress. I mean, you'd actually put more on to go outside for if you were going to make a trip or something.
Or chop wood or something like that.
Chopping wood, maybe.
You warm up a little bit from
the activity. But if you were to have to go in and stop somewhere, you'd want to have even another coat besides this, or a blanket with you to
I think that's what sometimes amazes me about what deprivations, by our living standards, they had to go through. Because a lot of times you'll have students or even adults ask you, well, wouldn't you like to live back then? I said, well, it's kind of fun to be in this kind of a thing for a day or a half a day or 2 days, but I don't think I'd really want to live in that. I'm kind of used to too many luxuries. It would be awful hard to unlearn all that I've taken for granted. And I think for you, especially in the cabin, it's much more primitive than us in the house.
Yeah.
That with the fireplace, 90% of your heat's going up the chimney, and the only thing you got going for you is the mass of stone that you have there. And we do have a nice mass of stone fireplace, so that there is a lot of heat that can come off of that. But you can imagine on a 20 or 30 below day, if you had it 40 degrees in there, you'd be lucky. And you'd be pumping wood to that like a guy's in a steamboat just shoving coal.
You need literally a semi-load of wood per fireplace per winter. And that's hand chopped and hand sawed and hand split.
So this had to be quite an ongoing process.
Can you imagine the amount of work just for one small building? Now, our building is
actually...
What's
the size of our cabin, Tom?
20 by 25, give or take.
And that's a fairly good sized cabin.
Yes, actually, the point I was going to make was that our cabin is too big. We inherited it, so we're certainly using it, and it works for the school groups, and when we have the public in, there's room for them. But a cabin that was built just to survive in would have maybe been less than half that size.
Maybe 12 by 12 or
maybe,
something?
Yeah.
Because they wanted to keep it down to
keep it down and keep your fire so that you could heat a smaller area and to get along. And then maybe your fur trading area, which you don't do much of in the wintertime, would be in an unheated building next door at Falls Amiens at Rice Lake. That's what theirs was the building, the living quarters was separate from the trading post, and the trading post was not heated.
So that living quarters was the only one that was heated, where they actually stayed. The other one they did their business.
They did their business. They could go over and take care of business.
Spend an hour or something, and then go back. And,
exactly.
Yeah, and why waste the heat for something that's occasionally, especially during the winter
Yeah,
months. It's probably-
spring, now that's different.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
summer, or winter, no,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, so it sounds like a great time in the cabin to view the cabin. And Tom and I have talked about this in the past too. It's a good time to come out, folks. It kind of gears you down for the holiday season, gets you back to what it's really all about, what Christmas is really about, and kind of gets you back to the basics. And also, another one of those opportunities, Tom, where we got more time to talk to the
Yep.
public. A lot of times we're busy at some of our major events, like the festival and that sort of thing, where we don't have time to spend so much one-on-one, where this is one of those events where we can spend that one-on-one time, get a little more in-depth, ask questions, answer questions. And like Tom has always said, and I agree with him 110%, is we learn every time we're down there. I mean, from what somebody says, whether it's a school kid, excuse me, asking a question that maybe we never thought of before, and gets the wheels turning, well, why is this, one of those sort of things. In the house now, we'll have, we've got a couple young ladies who'll be there doing interpretation, and we'll hopefully have some cooking on the stove there.
Cornbread.
Cornbread.
she's gonna bake cornbread or corn muffin type, a small little treat that you can have. She'll make some tea that you can participate in if you wish, and we're gonna try and not make it any more work than necessary. I mean, doing dishes is fine, but on a wood stove, doing dishes is a project.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a good interpretation as we can possibly do, but try to, so that we've got time to talk to the public also.
Right. And a little bit of division of labor in the house, where we have one or two interpreters doing the cooking and handing out things and talking about what they're doing and the use of the stove and how we use it. And kind of nice in a sense is that some of those came out of those cooking classes.
Yes, they did.
And that's the beauty of it, that cooking classes generated some people that like to cook and will be doing some of that cooking in the house. And then we've got some young people that do the interpretation, do an excellent job of it, the Katowski sisters, and they'll be doing the interpreting, so the people are freed up for the cooking. In the past, we've had the problem where the people that are interpreting are trying to do the cooking, and it just doesn't work.
You can only stretch people so far.
Yeah,
You can't.
and I don't think any people really feel comfortable in that, because when you get a group away, then you got something in the oven and you got to worry about this. So the house will have some tea, which is very common for especially the Wakeleys, being English descent, and some corn muffins, and maybe some crafters in the house in certain places, depending on the weather.
She's got a craft. Mary's got a thing, kind of not a luminary, but that type of a little craft that the kids can take home.
Oh, good.
With a snowflake on the brown paper sack kind of thing, which is, kind of plain, but yet not too big of a stretch from the Wakely's time.
Yeah, so we'll see, we'll have most of the buildings open and interpreted, the 3-bay shed, the blacksmith shop, the school, the trader's cabin, the house, and some carolers. We're hoping to have some carolers through Julie Stoffel's availability to get them for us through Assumption High School, and I think we'll have some of those junior, senior girls come down and guys come down and do some caroling. They've been there 10 or 12 years now.
And they do such a great job.
Yeah.
The one that impressed me, whether they can do it this year or not, I don't know, but they used to come and sing French carols in the cabin,
Yes.
and then go sing English carols at the Wakely house.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're kidding me. I
Yeah.
mean, and they do it so well.
Not only they got good voices, but they can do this in French
I mean,
and
it fits
English.
right in. It's like, you couldn't hire people to do that.
So that'll be a great time, and then sometimes we have if there's enough time and people can sit and wait around enough, sometimes we have a little storytelling in the house, or reading a Dickens or something like that, which is very appropriate for the era. Charles Dickens.
Just depending on what volunteers are where and who gets cold out where they're working and want to come in and warm up a little, so they grab the storybook, sit down and tell a story to a bunch of kids.
Right. So it's a great time to come down, folks, to Historic Point, Basse for Heritage Holiday. That's on Saturday, December 20th from 3 to 7 p.m. Admission $2 for adults, $1 for students, very reasonable. Come on down and spend that great time of getting back to the basics of what Christmas is all about. And we won't have any frills or fancy stuff there, but you're going to have a great time coming out. So just down on County Trunk Z onto Wakely Road, south and east of Nakusa. So come on down and spend the day with us. Thank you.